Skills already mentioned. Unflinching Courage time 4 in the main deck. He also got 2 copies of Celestian Charm, 2 copies of Ajani, Call of the Pride, 4 Chain of the Rocks, and 4 Boros Charms. And from playing against this deck, Boros Charms plays a huge role in this deck because obviously you suit up a guy, you double strike it, and that's it.
Yeah, it also gives you a burnout too, and this deck is susceptible, for example, to Supreme Verdict and running out of gas as well. Yeah. So the burnout helps a lot there too.
Fennel we saw play in round number 1. He actually picked up a loss in round number 1. He's won out since, obviously, playing this green-blue Devotion deck. When we watched him play earlier, he was unable to draw Nykthos in any of his games. Don't know if he knows what he's up against here playing against Majors, as Majors is going to start off with a Sacred Foundry and what looks to be a Chain to the Rocks. So get that Elvish Mystic out of here, says Majors. But both these decks are very unique decks from 2 very good Magic players.
Yeah, and as hard as it is to interact with the hexproof enchantment sort of setup, Fennel has 3 main deck copies of Cyclonic Rift, so he actually has a way to get out from a large enchanted creature.
See, Majors is just going to play a Stomping Ground tapped and pass the turn back here. This is going to be a Temple of Mystery here from Fennel, so he's going to scry again. See where he opts to leave this card. Looks like it's going towards the bottom, and it is. And there's a Sylvan Caryatid before he passes the turn back to Majors. Fennel, of course, you're probably familiar with from his Pro Tour top 8 last weekend at Pro Tour Born of the Gods, playing Storm in the constructed portion. A Glade Cover Scout here from Majors.
And now the jig is up.
Yeah, while I guess Chris played against this card last weekend too, actually.
Probably, yeah, probably a fair bit of this.
I'm sure he played against the Slippery Boggle deck at least once. Glade Cover Scout's normally hanging out in that deck too. So Fennel might be familiar with this type of strategy, even though you don't see it in Standard very often. You see he's going to untap here with 4 mana. There's the Boogeyman.
And Fennel was probably under the impression, based on Sacred Foundry, Chain of the Rocks that he was playing against, maybe it's Red Devotion, maybe it's a burn strategy. But in any event, in those worlds, he has a lot of time to set up. Now, not really the case. He's under the gun.
Here's a Forest off the top of Fennel. He's going to gain a life, go up to 21. Don't forget, too, Chain of the Rocks is an enchantment for Ethereal Armor, so this is a big deal here. That Glade Cover Scout's currently a 3/3, and it's only going to be moving on up.
And so you see Chris does appear to have Cyclonic Rift in his hand, so he does have a big setup to get to.
All right, Mr. Majors, let's see what you can do this turn. Got another copy of Chain of the Rocks, has Unflinching Courage too. It's very interesting, the positioning of this deck in the format, as now his Glade Cover Scout's going to have Trample and Lifelink and +2/+2. You count the armor, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be a 6/6 creature that's coming in.
And so far, Fennel's 2 matches on camera have been against very unorthodox decks. We've seen Junk Reanimator. We saw Fennel lose in round 1, primarily to Angel Serenity, not a card you see a lot of in Standard Magic. Yep. And now this nonsense is happening to him.
What a way to go, isn't it? As you do see a Scryland here. Top goes to the bottom, pass it back to Fennel. But, you know, as I was saying really quickly, you know, this deck is situated in the metagame in a very interesting spot because, you know, who sees this coming in a tournament like this? You think of Standards, mono blue, mono black, Revelation decks, green red monsters. Okay, you know, a lot of decks are actually lining up pretty well against this kind of strategy of, you know, they can really take advantage of, okay, suit up a huge guy and just give you the beatdowns. Even mono black is moving away from a card like Devour Flesh now, and with good reason. Yeah.
And in a world with no Devour Flushes, this deck might be the place to be.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it's something that's going to last very long. You know, maybe a 1 or 2 week thing where mono black is like, okay, fine, I'll play Devour Flesh again, whatever. But that also has, you know, a problem with other decks that are like, I don't care about Devour Flesh. So, you know, it kind of fills an interesting hole in the metagame right now. As Majors has started off this tournament pretty well with his 6/6 creature. That's probably going to get a little bit bigger. He does have Chain to the Rocks and a Johnny in his hand right now.
Yeah, and Michael just might be debating about Ajani giving Flying and Double Strike to his little Boggle here, but Fennel with 2 mana up, and it could be, you know, Michael trying to think about what he's playing around here. Fennel has one of the better responses available in the format right now in Cyclonic Rift.
He says, how about I just Chain to the Rocks instead? Take care of your Pulchronos. Fennel may have some sort of response here, we'll see. There goes the World Eater. Going to make the hexproof creature a little bit larger as well. Going to serve in for 7 this go around. See Fennel considering his blocks. Don't think he has the Rift in his hand right now.
And Michael did have a copy of Voice of Resurgence in his hand. If he was going to go down this road, I think I might have led with Voice just to test the waters first.
Like
it almost certainly induces a response from Chris if he has one.
Looks like he's just going to deploy that after combat now. Pass the turn back over to Fennel, who's sitting at 6 life. And, you know, the Hexproof deck tries to promote no interaction, just maybe a gold fishing type thing. There's a Temple of Mystery from the top of the deck via Courser. But Fennel's deck is also a goldfish deck, so he's going to have to try to overpower Majors in the next games because it doesn't look like he's going to pull this one out. But we'll see again.
Yeah. The Cyclonic Rift does give him a big out, especially with those Chain of the Rocks in play. I mean, it could be a really big tempo swing.
Yeah.
It's not clear if Fennel is going to be able to get there.
Course number 2 is going to come in. Fennel is going to go up to 8. Take a look at this card. There's a Forest from the Scry. You see Fennel explaining exactly how this does work. So you do get to see this card via Courser. I get to gain life, all that good stuff. And I was mistaken. He does have Cyclonic Rift in his hand. So as you mentioned, we could see a little bit of a setup here.
Yep.
And what's really interesting, too, is the interaction between Cyclonic Rift and Voice of Resurgence, because Cyclonic Rift's Overload will be placed onto the stack, and the Voice of Resurgence abilities go onto the stack above that. So then the 2 tokens will come into play first, and then Rift will say, oh, get those out of here anyway. There's an Ajani. You see very quickly Major says double strike this attack for a whole bunch. Is a whole bunch the win, though? I don't think the answer is yes. If you bounce the Ethereal Armor, he's still alive, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
This is an attack for 6 if he bounces Ethereal Armor.
You see
and Michael very quickly said, flying double strike, kill you, basically. But Fennel does have an answer.
And this is going to get mighty interesting, too, because that Ajani is going to take a long time to get back online. So, you know, then Major's just going to have to do some ground pounding. And Fennel's deck is suited quite well to gum up the ground.
Yeah. The boards, you know, the ground's, again, like you said, pretty, like, reasonably stable right now for Fennel, so.
So there you do see the Rift. The Voice of Resurgence token going to come in, of course, because Rift was played on Majors' turn. So he's going to get a 3/3 token out there.
I still think long-term this is going to require Fennel to either really overpower Michael or find another copy of Cyclonic Rift.
I think that's the big game plan, find another copy of Rift here. It is quite good against him, as you did mention.
Michael has a lot of life to play with, too, because don't forget about these Unflinching Courage hits. He's at 31 life right now.
Going to go up to 37. Moves Fennel down to 2. We'll see if Fennel can maybe find some lands to gain a little bit of life off of Courser, but we'll also see if he can maybe for once in his life find a Nykthos. We don't seem to ever see him draw one when we're watching him.
It's been revealed to Garrick a few times. But
That's true. That is true. All right, Fennel's made out of this turn life. He's going to draw Garrick. Top card, Kiora. Not so good against the Hexproof mechanic.
Sort of, by definition, not very well suited for this matchup.
Back left corner of the room. So the giant players, please meet your judge.
Although not every creature in Michael's deck is literally Hexproof. There's Voice of Resurgence and Fiendslayer Paladin alongside the Hexproof creatures. So,
all right, here comes Garrick. And there's your die. Looks like he's going to tick it up. So let's take a look at the top 5 cards. Kiora, Island, 2 copies of Kiora's Follower, and an Elvish Mystic. So those 2 cards are going to go to the bottom. Fennel, of course, going to organize Kiora on the top in case we get to that point. Let's see what the top card here is for Chris with Courser in just a moment. It's a Forest. That's actually pretty important. He's going to be able to play that, gain a little bit of life. He's going to go up to 4.
a little bit of breathing space. The life total definitely matters because, you know, Michael is potentially threatening lethal with all of the creatures he has in play. So anything that Chris is allowed to connect with him so he can set up better double blocks and what have you is very valuable for him.
Lukranos is the card that's revealed here for Fennel. You see Fennel trying to figure out, are there any attacks that I can make? Is there anything profitable I can do? I'd love to get a Johnny off the board given the opportunity. Of course, don't forget, too, Fennel's sitting at 4 life, so Major's just drawing to 4 copies of Boros Charm.
Yeah.
In addition to a lot of other cards. There's an Elvish Mystic. Fennel passes the turn back.
Although Courser has the potential to pull Fennel out of Boros Charm range.
So Majors are on tap. He'll take a draw. There's another copy of Glade Cover Scout. Not the best draw right now, but one thing that will do is make that voice resurgence token a little bit bigger.
Yeah, Fennel has nothing but small stuff in play right now. So anything that allows Michael's creatures to grow past the point that, 4/4 is the critical flash point here, as it means that Courser can no longer block and survive.
You see Major's doing a lot of math right now. Okay, what blocks can you do? Because, assuming that he puts the Ethereal Armor onto the Glade Cover Scout, that's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going to be a 7/7. That doesn't account
with trample
yeah,
also.
with trample. That doesn't account for a Johnny's counter going anywhere yet either. So we're looking at a 7/7. That means he's going to have to put 7 toughness in front of it. And that's why you see Major just put that Sylvan Carriage next to the Courser. He says, okay, that accounts for the 7. What do the other attacks do? What happens if I play Glade Cover Scout pre-combat? Where do I want to put my Johnny counter? So he's really trying to figure out exactly what he's supposed to do right now with these attacks.
Not to say that this is even necessarily the correct thing to be doing, but if Michael was, for example, put Ethereal Armor on the Voice of Resurgence, play his creature before combat, and pump the Scout, then he has 3 different 4-power creatures in play.
Sure.
That means every creature is lethal.
The armor's going to go on the Trampler.
I like this path better for Michael because Trample's just so good right now. It contorts Fennel's block so much, but
Yeah.
this is complicated math. There's a lot of ways for Michael to splice this.
So here comes a 4/4, and here comes what is now an 8/8 First Strike Trample Lifelink. Again, we get the 8/8 from 2 power, one from the Glade Cover Scout, 1 from the die, which is the counter from a Johnny, Call of the Pride. You've got 2 more from Unflinching Courage, and you've got 4 for Ethereal Armor, 1 from the armor itself, 1 from the Courage, and 2 from the Chain to the Rocks of that Sacred Foundry. For Fennel, it's time to make a block of some fashion.
Yeah, this is a tough block. Again, he has to get enough in front of the Scout to just not die from trample damage, and that's going to collapse a lot of his board.
It's kind of interesting where, in this particular situation, he doesn't have to put everything in front of the Scout. Because he can take a little bit of a hit from the trample damage.
Yeah. But he has to put a lot.
Yeah, he really, really does. So,
I wonder if Fennel is just wondering if he could just play a normal match of Magic on camera.
The answer is no. It's a resounding no. You see Fennel wants to try to get rid of that Voice of Resurgence token, maybe put the other 2 blockers over here on the Glade Cover Scout. He's going to lose, as you mentioned, a lot of his board doing this, and the collapsing of the board, as you so eloquently put it, is the big problem here.
Although Garrett gives him some ability to refuel here, but it's really hard to imagine Fennel being able to cobble together the mixture of mana and cards. He needs a lot of every resource in the game, basically, to keep his head above water here.
So let's see what happens here. As Majors has to figure out how he wants to organize blocks, obviously, with the Elemental token. Because it's going to deal 4 damage. It can take out the Courser, it can take out both Elvish Mystics, depending on what he wants to trade with there. And then, of course, Fennel's other 2 creatures, the Courser and the Sylvan Carriage, that are on the Glade Cover Scout, those are going to die.
And I feel here, if I'm Michael, that I probably just want to take care of the Elvish Mystics, because to me it feels like Fennel's bottleneck right now is mana.
Yeah.
He needs a lot of mana.
Especially when he's got no Nykthos out there, because he can't seem to draw them. I'm in agreement with you. He will take down the Coursers. Now, part of the reason to take down Courser in this particular situation is because you don't allow your opponent to draw any other cards.
He also removes more toughness from Fennel's board, which could be critical with a trampling creature in play.
Yeah. So Pulachronos is going to go to the grip. You see Fennel's going to turn that over, but we do all know that that's coming. We might actually see Garrick on minus duty this go around.
You can see how important Cyclonic Rift is in this matchup. It would be a really big tempo swing here. It still may not be enough for Fennel to win the game, as Michael could reset his board. He has a lot of life to play with, so he could afford to take some hits, but it is definitely one of Fennel's most important pieces.
I've been there before. You see Fennel, hand in the hair. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to win? He's going to start, looks like, are we going up?
Start looking for help.
We are going up, okay. Let's see who the top 5 are. Garrick, Elvish Mystic, Arbor Colossus, Voyaging Satyr, Kiora. That's 3 cards going to hand. How good are they, though, is the question.
Again, none of these are presenting long-term answers.
And that Arbor Colossus does a nice speed bump impersonation against the Glade Cover Scout that's suited up. It's about the best that it gets, though.
Yeah. And not this turn, but the following turn, assuming Ajani stays in play, Michael has access to flying and double strike again. So there's a lot of things for Fennel to try to power through here.
You see, Fennel's saying, if only I could do these things. Why can't Kiora be good against you? It's one of the best cards in my deck. This is ridiculous. But I think Matrix has probably caught a lot of people off guard like this over the course of this weekend.
Oh, sure.
Again, you don't walk into a standard tournament nowadays expecting to play against this deck.
There's plenty of game one hands that you draw against a random opponent and you say, okay, this is fine. It's got some lands, it's a little on the slow side, but it's standard. And this sort of hexproof deck can put you under the gun so fast. And Michael's deck wasn't even particularly, his draw wasn't even particularly fast this game. He did find a hexproof creature and have a lot of enchantments, but the ball really didn't start rolling until turn 3 or 4 or so. But Fennel spent some early turns kind of setting up, and that's just not something you have time to do.
And we still haven't seen Chris actually, blow the doors off any of the games that we've watched him play. There's an Arbor Colossus. Here's a Kiora's follower impacting the turn back. He hasn't done anything busted like a Nykthos deck is known to do.
Yeah, it's really shows how important that card is. A lot of and Chris has actually de-emphasized it in some senses. He's not playing Burning Tree Emissary. That said, it's still, there's a lot of expensive cards, and to maximize Garruk and Arbor Colossus and Cyclonic Rift, you just really need a lot of mana.
So Fennel's basically at Majors, kind of whatever he wants to do at his mercy, for lack of a better term.
And again, Fennel's blocks are just so contorted.
Yeah. Arbor Colossus is resigned to blocking, playing the speed
It's
bump
chumping.
role. Yeah, it is a 6/6 chumper.
He has a chumping Arbor Colossus.
Yeah. I don't see that very often.
An Arbor Colossus is actually a card I think is really well situated in Standard right now. It's bigger than the stuff in the green-red monster list. It can stop Storm Breath Dragon, but they haven't been that impressive for Fennel so far on camera. We saw him with 2 Arbor Colossus get swept away by an Elspeth minus, which caused him to basically lose the game on the spot. And we're seeing it here, just not quite up to task.
I agree with you. I think that Arbor Colossus is really well positioned right now. Its casting cost is a little bit difficult, but in reality, not really all that tough for the green decks.
Yeah.
So you see the counter is going to go into the Voice of Resurgence token, and we go to the red zone yet again. Michael carefully planning this turn out.
Diversifying his bonds a little bit here. He's presenting another lethal attacker.
So Fennel, time to go blocking again. And the worst part here for Fennel too is that let's say he puts lethal damage on the Voice Resurgence, well, and Michael's just going to get another 3/3 creature because of the Elemental token. So it's a rock and a hard place right now here for the recent Pro Tour top 8 competitor. And here come your boy. Yep, you see him. He doesn't love his blocks, but he doesn't have much of a choice.
It has got to be quite the grind to just try to figure out how you're chump blocking every turn.
This is true. This is true.
All right, so I had to put my 6/6 and my 5/5 in front of his 1 mana creature, and then I had to go put a bunch of mana creatures against his 3/3.
I think Fennel realized too that there's no reason to double chump or not double chump, trade with the Voice Resurgence because it's just going to give him another token. So that's just not a good block at all. So he's just going to be on chump duty on both of the creatures, take a little bit of trample damage. There's a Fiend Slayer Paladin for Mages before passing the turn back. So he's filling up his board here with things to do. And as you mentioned, I think most important of all of these things is the fact that Ajani can now go double strike again.
Yeah. And even Cyclonic Rift doesn't necessarily get Fennel very far here because Michael has 53 life. So he can afford to take a couple hits rebuilding his board and setting up the scenario again.
53 is a bit much.
It is more than twice what you start the game with. It's quite a bit.
That's a fact.
That's just math.
Fennel with 7 mana right now, 8 if you count Elvish Mystic, 9 if you count Kiora's Follower. Hasn't activated Garrick yet this turn. Not sure how he wants to go about doing it, even if he does. This is a man in need of a Nykthos.
Yes. But even that, I mean, I don't even know if he has the tools in hand. Yeah, he's just giving this up. I don't even think he has the tools in hand, even if he got to deploy his entire hand to stop what was happening on the board.
And Major says, here are your creatures that I took from Chained to the Rocks.
They're yours.
Appreciate that. So Michael Major's going to win game number 1 over Chris Fennel here. As we are midway through round number 5, you've got Fennel's deck list in front of you. Last time we saw Bramble Crush, you think we're going to see it again?
I think Bramble Crush is pretty well suited for this matchup. We saw him bringing in last time against a Junk Reanimator list, basically as Stone Rain, possibly to kill a Whip of Erebos. And now here I think it's going to be very well suited, of course, blowing up enchantments.
Okay. Anything else hiding out over there?
He has 4 copies of Mistcutter Hydra, 4 Nylea's Disciple, a Primeval Bounty, a Plummet, and a Sylvan Primordial. I just don't think these cards are really well suited. Nylea's Disciple is for aggressive matchups, but this is something where if Michaels is doing his thing, he's hitting for enormous chunks. It's not, you know, here's 3 damage, here's 4 damage. It's take 12, take 14. Is that kind of progression?
Sure.
And so Life Gain just isn't very well suited to fight that kind of battle.
And also, you know, the 3/3 body, I'm not sure how relevant it would be. Not to say that it's bad or anything, but it's not exciting.
Well, 6/6 bodies were not exciting in that game, so I had to imagine 3/3s are not that well suited for the task either.
That's true. Take a look at Major's sideboard here. We got 4 Skylasher, 2 copies of Selesnya Charm, 2 Revoke Existence, 4 Mizium Mortars, 2 Mending Touch, and a Gift of Orzhova. Gift of Orzhova, I think, of those 15 cards, is my favorite so far. Flying is sweet against him.
Yeah, Fennel has definitely shown the capability of being able to challenge on the ground. Yeah. He has Sylvan Caryatids and Courser of Crewfixes and Mana Elves. None of these trade with the things that are going on in Michael's deck, but it does make it kind of prohibitive to try to attack with non-tramplers on the ground. Gift of Orzhova allows him to break out of that.
Other cards, you know, Skylasher, I like the addition of Skylasher in this deck because you need a way to beat Mono Blue Devotion and Power 3 Masterways and company because going to the air isn't the best plan against them. Skylasher is great against that deck. Not great here, of course. Yeah. Selesnya Charm, it's okay if he cares about, if Majors cares about killing big creatures. There was Arbor Colossus and Pulachronos.
Yeah, he has shown that there are some big stuff and potentially other stuff in the list as well. You know, you're seeing Garrick and presumably Nykthos as well. Who knows what large creatures Fennel has access to, and he's seen 2 good ones already, so wouldn't be surprised to see Selesnya Charm coming in as well. He does have a couple inefficient creatures in the matchup, most notably Fiendslayer Paladins.
Yeah.
Just not really out of place here.
It's not for this matchup.
Yeah, so that one's an easy one to cut. So he has a little bit of wiggle room just immediately built in.
As far as the other cards, which I don't think are going to be joining us here, Mizium Mortars, it's okay. I don't think it's for this particular matchup, even though he does have a lot of mana accelerants. And in a perfect world, he overloads Mizium Mortars and he clears off the board and doesn't care about the big monsters. But I don't think that's what this matchup's about. And then Mending Touch is a cute little trick against Supreme Verdict that we have seen Bant Hexproof use last season, and you've seen Michael trying to use it here.
Yeah, actually, you know, I actually don't think it's unreasonable for Mizium Mortars to come in.
Okay.
If you look at this list, he has 2 Fiendslayer Paladins. Those are easy to cut. I also feel like Boros Charm is out of place in this matchup. It wouldn't surprise me if Boros Charm is just, it's okay in the main deck, you know, it's totally fine, but he wants to have it as basically an answer to Supreme Verdict.
Okay.
And I would assume that in most post-board games that don't involve Supreme Verdict, Boros Charm is actually one of the cards that gets sideboarded out. If you're living in that world, that means he has 6 slots to play with just right away. And Mizium Mortars, though not great, you know, he showed a lot of mana creatures. It's possible for the game to get kind of boggy. We saw in that game, Fennel was able to gum down the ground. An overloaded Mizium Mortars could have been a thing, and keeping Fennel off his mana production early on could be valuable as well. So I don't know, you know, that's obviously a lot to do with how Michaels wants to sideboard, but if I was sitting in Michael's seat, I would consider Fiendslayer Paladin and Boros Charm to just be flex slots that get cut here.
Well, we'll see what both players do, as we did bring it back to the booth here for you guys momentarily, but we do continue with the match. I think there was just a question as far as Oracle text is concerned and everything else. So we are good to go now. And again, Chris Fennel will be on the play here for game number 2, as he did lose the first one. And we do have breaking news, Patrick. We are over 2,000 for Richmond.
congratulations. And, you know, the target is still Madrid. The plan here is for this to be the largest constructed Grand Prix in Magic's history. I think Richmond's going to hit it.
We want to see you there. We know at least one person will be there, Brian Kibler.
Yeah.
He will be there.
I mean, we know the reasons, right? The guy loves Magic. He wants to put up a good showing with his Naya deck that he felt was good but didn't have a great showing with. But is the mixture of money and time and inconvenience is just incredible that he is willing to go through here to attend this
We are who we are.
That's true.
Kesha put it best.
She's probably not the first one to utter those lines. I know what you mean.
I disagree. She is a genius.
Known philosopher and poet, Kesha with a $sign.
You better believe
said
it.
it best. We are who we are.
Fennel taking one more look at the 15 before he presents here. Majors basically doing the same. And of course here, you guys can join us on Twitter at SCG Live, hashtag SCGATL. Get in on the conversation all weekend long as we're in round number 5 of 10 here in Atlanta. Next weekend we do Richmond. Weekend after that, Seattle. Yourself and Patrick Chapin.
Yes.
Should be a lot of fun over there. We follow that bad boy up with Los Angeles, me and you.
Yes.
Before heading over to Charlotte.
Me and you and Osip, right?
Yes, to conclude season number 1, we're going to crown a champion for the Invitational. We're going to crown a Standard Open champion. We're going to crown a Legacy Open champion. And we're also going to put 2 of the 16 players into the Players' Championship.
These months have flown by.
Not sure where this year has gone.
Well, we're only in March, in fairness, but
it seems like just yesterday that you and I were stuck in Indianapolis in a polar vortex.
Yeah,
it really does. Which I would prefer not to come here, even though it was a little chilly this morning.
It was a little brisk.
Just a touch.
It was nice though.
To be fair, given what I saw in the news as far as how Atlanta deals with snow, we really don't want snow to happen this weekend. That was an embarrassment.
The local populace does not seem well suited to handle that specific inclement condition.
I would be surprised if there's a single snowplow here, like in the state.
Well, there better be now. You know, some lessons you only got to learn once.
This is true. This is true. The pictures look like something out of The Walking Dead.
Yep. You only don't need snow equipment until you really need. You know, I mean, you need it once you need it, and then you really need it.
So again, Fennel, he is on your left, just coming off of his Pro Tour top 8 last weekend in Valencia. Again, congratulations to him playing Storm in that tournament and probably having, I mean, he actually didn't do as great as he normally does in Limited. He actually had a great constructed record in that tournament.
He was, what, 4-2 in
I believe 4-2, yeah. I mean, normally he's a 5-1-6-0 candidate every time out with his unique strategies.
Winning 2/3 of your matches at the Pro Tour is still an insane clip.
Yeah, but for what you expect from him at a Pro Tour in Limited, I don't want to say it's disappointing because obviously going 4-2 in Limited is obviously quite good at a Pro Tour. Yeah. But again, you don't only think of Chris Fennel, you think of a 6-0 or 5-1 candidate in Limited.
Yeah, I believe the number that I saw, Paul Jordan, who's actually a great person to follow on Twitter, as he has a ton of really interesting stats he's able to piece together before events. I believe that the number I saw for Fennel was around 69 or 70% match win clip.
Impressive.
That is really impressive.
I see Major's going to take a mulligan and go down to 6 here. And like I said, you know, when we saw Chris in round 1, it's a player that you and I have known for quite a long time.
Yeah.
He actually beat you in the finals of a Grand Prix. Don't want to bring it up, but it did happen.
He did not personally
beat
yes,
me. Defend yourself.
Actually, we beat Fennel.
Okay.
Their other his 2 teammates beat us.
His other 2 teammates were pretty good, though.
They were.
Bill Stead and Charles Giddy.
Yes.
Both former national champions, among other things.
Their squad was loaded. That's true.
That was way back in 2004, though. I was actually at that tournament, just a small kid then.
Yeah.
Had no idea what I was doing. See if Fennel's going to play a Voyaging Satyr. Pass the turn back. Majors with a Sacred Foundry on tap, so it looks like we've got our first creature from him, and it's a Voice of Resurgence.
Looks like Major's hand is really mana heavy.
Well, he's going to have to try to ride that Voice to victory then, I suppose, as here's a Temple of Mystery from Fennel. Says the top card's good enough. Oh my gosh, that is a Nykthos in his hand. He found one. I'm blown away.
And if his hand looks like we can see some fireworks starting next turn.
Where's the thing? You see the gears turning in his head right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do this, and the next turn I'm going to do that. And it's going to be awesome. I'm going to generate a boatload of mana. So We have an unflinching courage. We do. All right, pressure's on. Fennel's going to go down 16 majors up to 22.
But these are the kind of starts, you know, without an ethereal armor to give first strike or Johnny to distort things, these are the kind of draws that Fennel is really well suited to handle. I mean, he can go, if you want to brawl on the ground, Fennel's deck is definitely able to do that.
Oh, yeah. Fennel, considering playing that Nykthos right now, does have a Courser of Crufix in his hand. Also has a Garrick as well. You see the Arbor Colossus as well. There is a Garrick. It's time to tick maybe that up, or are we going down? We are going up. Let's take a look at 5 cards, shall we? The slow roll. I like a good sweat. Elvish Mystic, and a Courser. 2 lands going to go to the bottom. This next turn, he's going to go crazy.
Yeah, well, the Garrick is exposed here. If Michael has anything to supplement this voice, then he can take down this Garrick, but
I mean, truth be told, I think Fennel will be okay with that.
oh, sure, he's got a lot of mana to work with, a lot of cards in hand. But
it's basically a fog, I guess.
If Michael does not have a way to pump this voice, and it doesn't look like he does, then Garrick gets to go again next turn with a Nykthos in play.
Anybody's game then. All right, maybe not. Well, he does not have anything else, it looks like. He's going to Celestia Charm. Okay. It says it's a rough way to use Celestia Charm, but you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Cannot possibly let Fennel spin that Garrick again. Just no way.
Major's going to gain 6 life off of that exchange. He's going to go up to 28, but it's a very unexciting turn here for the Naya Hexproof player, as Fennel is really going to settle in now because it's time to go absolutely crazy, I think.
I mean, he's still short a little bit on colored mana permanents in play, so he may have to spend this turn setting up and then the following turn really go nuts. A lot of it depends on the specifics of his hand.
Nykthos is just a scary card to sit across the table from.
Oh, yeah.
Because you just know that, okay, something really not good for me is going to happen in a minute here. And if it's not this turn, then it's the next one. But I have to keep your devotion as low as I possibly can, because there's a Courser. Here's a Breeding Pool untapped. And Chris hasn't turned over the top card of his deck just yet. Just moving a little bit quickly here, as there's a Garrick now. There is the top card, Kiora's Follower. So he's able to generate a boatload of mana. Kiora's Follower, Cyclonic Rift, Forest, Voyaging Satyr, and Bramble Crush. Interesting to see how good his Garricks are going to be after sideboard, where you have to believe he's going to be bringing in spells.
Yeah, I was about to mention the exact same thing. It looks like Fennel has a lot of mana creatures in his deck and a lot of spells post-board. So Garrick really isn't finding as many haymakers as it might have found in the first game.
Yeah. There's the top card from Courser, Forest. And that's the building turn that we needed to see from Fennel, and it'll be the next turn, because you take a look at his board right now. Devotion just right now is 6 for Nykthos, and then he's got 2 Voyaging Satyrs as well. Looks like Gift of Orzhova was the draw here for Majors. That's not a bad draw. Go to the skies.
Yeah, not a shabby draw. It allows him to exactly take care of Garrick and then have a flyer in play, which Fennel has shown some inability to handle and so far in these games.
And so Voice is going to take that down. Majors will go up to 33. But Fennel doing obviously a nice job of just not taking any damage. So Chris will draw a card. It'll be that Forest. Top card of his deck is an island.
And it really looks like Chris lacks, you know, he doesn't really have anything to handle a flyer. He doesn't have anything really powerful in his hand. So for as land heavy as Michael's draw has been here, for the time being, he has enough tools to work with.
Well, let's see where we begin. It looks like maybe Courser number 2 is going to come down here. And it is. We think.
There's a lot of math that goes into trying to figure out these Nykthos turns.
So Courser number 2 does come in. Island going to come into play. Fennel going to go up to 17. 2 triggers from Courser. Top card is an Elvish Mystic. That is likely his draw next turn.
And Chris actually does need to eventually find something pretty powerful here. because he can't really try to damage race against the life link that Michael's generating.
Yeah. He needs to do something of relevance, get a bigger board out there. See, a bunch of mana is going to get tapped here. Chris is figuring out exactly the best way to go about using Nykthos.
And now that Voice of Resurgence has flying through Get to Orzhova, Arbor Colossus is now a card that is very good in this spot.
6 mana, 4, 1, 3, 2, 1. Okay, that's 0. So he uses everything. And I says, all right, let me get you for 3. Put you down to 30.
Fennel's hand is just lands. Just 2 lands left over.
And Elvish Mystic coming. Now, Majors is drawing pretty poorly here, but he's in the skies where Fennel's not, so he's going to come across for 5 again. Majors is going to go up to 35. Fennel's going to go down to 12.
And the life gain from these coursers could be critical here.
Now, again, we know Fennel's going to draw that Elvish Mystic, so let's see what's on top. Pulachronos.
Very good draw here. As
Yes.
with Nykthos, Fennel certainly has enough mana to use it to blow up a Voice of Resurgence, even through all those enchantments.
Looks like Breeding Pool's going to come into play tapped here for Chris in a moment. And it is. So he's going to go up to 14. I think we got everybody get in there, which, you know, looks like it might be a ton of damage.
It's not really.
It's not, yeah.
It's roughly 10 or 11 points of damage.
Yeah. So you see 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
It's
It
11,
will be
yeah.
11, yeah. So Major's going to go down to 24. And a big Elvish Mystic going to come down.
Boom.
Pass the turn back. Majors, what can he find? Temple of Triumph.
It's been incredibly land-heavy draw here.
And this is a deck that only has 22 lands in it, too. So he's going to come across for 5. He's going to go up to 29. Fennel's going to go down to 9. There's Temple. Let's see what he does with the Scry. Especially in the knowing that he's got to play against Pulachronos now. And that Voice of Resurgence token is not going to be long, or that Voice of Resurgence, excuse me, is not going to be long for this world. The token will be. You see a lot of onlookers here.
Yeah.
Really interested to see exactly what Majors has going on.
Both of these decks definitely drawing a crowd. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's not mono blue versus mono black over and over again like we know from 2 months ago. And a lot of players, I'm sure, are interested to see the new offerings that Standard has.
Looks like this card's going to the bottom. It is. And Majors just has to turn back yet again. So a game that is kind of slipping away from him right now.
Yeah.
Let's see what the top card here is for Chris. Another copy of Garrick.
Another really powerful draw again. Fennel, with Nykthos in play, essentially has unlimited mana to operate with.
Going to play that Forest, push himself up to 11. I think it's about to be showtime, folks. Been waiting to see his deck do its thing
Yeah.
for some time now.
I mean, this is a pretty weird example of it doing its thing.
Yeah, it really is. It really, really is.
And he can make that Pulachronos very large.
Yeah.
With the Voyaging Satyrs in play. It's a lot.
There's 4 mana. And there is the Hydra. I can't even. The amount of mana, I can't even count the amount of mana he can make.
2,
He's got
4,
Kior's Follower. He's got 3
5.
Voyaging Satyrs.
1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try to count up the amount of mana here.
I wish you the best
1, 2,
of
3,
luck.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 Devotion to Grain in play. So Nykthos activation is tap 3, get 13. Then it's net. It's like 40 some odd mana.
Oh, okay. That's it?
I'm shorthanding the math, but we're looking at about 40 mana.
I think Chris is going to use it all to make easily the biggest Pulachronos we've had on camera.
This is a new record.
Yeah. Very easily the largest one we've had on camera during SCG Live. Chris says, all right, I'm going to add this much. I'm going to, should I use this? Should I use this Temple maybe? Maybe
Yeah.
not. I don't know. I think Chris is trying to figure out if he can play around something like a, like a Selesnya charm on his Pulkranos or not.
I mean, I feel like that ship has kind of sailed here.
Yeah, as do I. I agree. And I think you have to believe that Majors really doesn't have anything in his hand at this point. Even though we have perfect information and Michael's going to concede the game, he hasn't done anything.
Right.
And so what would he possibly be sandbagging given the situation? And Majors will concede the game. So Chris Fennel is going to even it up between Green Blue Devotion and Naya Hexproof. We'll move into game 3 in just a moment.
Very land-heavy hand there for Michael. As bad as that game looked by the time we got to the end of it, I think, with Ethereal Armor or just maybe another random enchantment, even a Madcap skills, I think Michael could have pretty easily stolen that game.
Yeah, I think I don't think it would take much.
No, I mean, the game was still pretty close there.
Yeah.
Obviously, by the end, it was kind of laughable, the discrepancy of stuff in play. But there was a lot of turns that went by where Michael did very little that if he had done something, he would have been able to steal even that game. Flying is just very good against Chris's deck.
Yeah, and most Devotion decks, to be fair.
Yeah.
It really just puts a huge weight on Arbor Colossus to get the job done, and that's assuming that it's in your deck somewhere.
Right. It's a little soft in the air. A lot of green Devotion decks splash red for Mizium Mortars. Fennel doesn't have access to that, so he's playing a full playset of Arbor Colossus, and he also has 3 copies of Kiora as well that can provide some defense against flyers.
Yeah. Except for those hexproof ones. That's the big
Correct.
problem, yeah. All right, well, we'll see what happens here. You see both players finish shuffling up here. We're under 10 minutes in the round. So I don't think either deck takes too long to win, so that's a good thing, especially for Major's side. He can win a short game very easily.
Well, it's even though in terms of turns, the game probably doesn't go on for very long, both of these decks are pretty math intensive. You've seen both players calculating blocks and trying to figure out the race and stuff like that, so the pace of the game isn't necessarily the fastest. It is hard to noodle through all the iterations of your turns, especially in Fennel's seat.
I agree. Again, Michael Majors will be on the play this game. As we do go to game number 3 here. Playing Naya Hexproof, a deck that is getting a lot of traction on Magic Online. Haven't seen it put up pretty much any real-life results. But, it's kind of new.
It seems like a very reasonable response to green-red monsters.
I agree.
This feels like it's attacking the deck on a totally different axis.
An axis that does not want to be attacked on at all. They don't really have enchant removal or anything of that nature. If they do, it's 1, 2 copies of Unravel the Aether. That's about it. Not much.
Pulkranos is good in the mirror match, and it's not even because of Monstrous. It's just a 4-mana 5/5 is very good against that deck.
Yeah.
So if a 4-mana 5/5 is good, then 1 and 2 mana 8/8s have to be good as well.
Both players keep. We're underway in game number 3. Majors led off with a Sacred Foundry, plays a Stomping Ground tapped and passed the turn back, while Fennel just had a Breeding Pool on turn 1 that came into play tap. Turn 2, he just plays a Forest, and it's crazy to believe he does not have Mana Accelerant. That seems almost impossible. Now here's a Witch Stalker.
Yeah, his deck is almost nothing but Mana Acceleration.
Fennel draws an Ichthos for the turn, which is not the best draw given that he has no Mana, so he's just going to pass back. Wow. Majors draws his card. You see there's an Unflinching Courage now in his hand.
And time to see the extent of the damage Michael can offer up this turn.
Let's party. I think that Witch Stalker's can become Mighty Courageous. Attack here for 5. Fennel's going to consult his hand. We might see Cyclonic Rift on the Unflinching Courage, but that's not all that exciting. Yep, that's what we're going to see. So Witch Stalker's going to get a little bit bigger. And it's going to be attack here for 4.
I believe this also might be the first Witch Stalker trigger in SCG Open history.
Easily the first time ever.
We are breaking new ground this weekend.
There's an island. He's got to have like a Pulkranos, right? Cure. Okay, there's the 5/5.
He had to keep something.
Yeah, if you've done to play on turn 4, I don't know what you crept there, Chris, but he does have something to play there in the 5/5 Hydra.
Magic player says
Major's going to replay Unflinching Courage, attack here for 6 now, thanks to that counter on the Witch Stalker. He'll even gain 6 life in the exchange, so he's going to go up to 26. So 26 to 10.
If your match has
The colored mana situation does not seem ideal in Michael's deck.
It's all over the place. You've got some dual lands and some scry lands to kind of hold it together, but scry lands force you to play kind of off curve in a deck that feels like it wants to curve out a lot.
Yep. And you need to have a certain number of mountains for Chain to the Rocks, and the mana is asking a lot.
Yeah.
And you see the bottleneck right now. He had Ethereal Armor in his hand last turn that he couldn't add to his board. This game could have been over on turn 4 potentially if he was able to put both Unflinching Courage and Ethereal Armor on his creature. Instead, he's only in 1 enchantment a turn land, which is giving Chris enough breathing room to potentially fight this.
Fennel really taking his time on this turn as he knows I'm under the gun now and it's probably only going to get worse next turn. I have to believe that you probably have some number of enchantments in your hand to make things worse for me.
And you see him, he's looking at Nykthos and Cyclonic Rift. So there's a path here.
Yeah.
There's a course he can try to take. It's just, does he have the time and the sufficient tools to execute?
Starts by playing Nykthos. Can cast Arbor Colossus, which I believe he does have in his hand right now, so he's definitely got things to do.
But tapping out for a threat that's unlikely to be able to block next turn is really dangerous.
I agree.
He may want to, for example, play, he has Bramble Crush in his hand, he could just cast that. But he still eventually, I imagine, is trying to get to the point where he can set up Cyclonic Rift.
It's really tough too because, you know, ideally, I think what Chris wants to do is he wants to build more of his devotion.
Yeah.
So by playing Arbor Colossus, it makes his Nykthos better, which makes him able to actually be able to cast Cyclonic Rift with Overload. There's so many different paths he can take. Looks like a tough deck to play.
But every turn that he just casts creatures, there's a chance that Michael has enough enchantments in hand to force him to block on the spot. And so trying to build up devotion when there's a chance that you might just end up chump blocking very shortly thereafter isn't a great plan either.
That was a really fast untap from Mike.
He just drew, I believe he just drew a Temple Garden, and that second white mana unleashes Gift of Orzhova. It allows him to put Ethereal Armor plus another single white enchantment. So that Temple Garden was a big draw.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the Gift is hanging out in his hand right now. It's a good one-up for the sideboard, that's for sure.
Yep.
I'd actually like to see some of those maybe make it in the main deck. They look good in that last game.
They were excellent last game.
And it's going to be equally good here. Also has Selesnya Charm in his hand too, so Arbor Colossus isn't even the check mark that we may have thought it was going to be. Here's a Mizium Mortars. Card we weren't sure if he was going to bring that in or not.
Yeah, I like bringing in Mortars because I don't think he wants Boros Charm here.
There's Gift. Oh, excuse me, there's Ethereal Armor. He's saving Gift. That's going to attack for a bunch. Wow. 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 8. With the ability to play Celestial Charm and make it 10. Yeah, that's really good. And then if Fennel does cast Cyclonic Rift, which he's almost priced into doing now, the Witch Stalker gets a little bit bigger.
Yep. The second Witch Stalker trigger. Do you believe in miracles?
2 counters in 1 game, huh? That's the best 3-drop I've ever seen. I didn't even think it was possible. All right, what do we do here? Chris has no blocks, I believe. I think he's prepared to take an amount of damage. The question is how much? And it looks like it's going to be 8. Put Majors up a little bit, move Fennel down to 2.
So now we'll see here if Chris is able to put something together here, but it just looks like he doesn't quite have enough time and mana.
You see Major still has the Celestial Charm in his hand, still has Gift as well, so he's he might have all the windows closed here on Chris Fennel.
Michael's play has been sharp. I mean, this is not his first time doing this.
Yeah, and you know, the thing I like, not too reckless with his spells,
yeah.
You know, things like that nature. He could have just gone for it with Celestial Charm, but you know, what's the point? You know, there's really no reason to move in with that. You know, it could take out a problematic Arbor Colossus instead, things of that nature. He doesn't really have to make a move, as there's a Bramble Crush.
Boom.
There goes Unflinching Courage.
Bramble Crush talking Unflinching Courage with a Witch Stalker and a counter on it.
Yep.
Welcome to the Standard Open.
Just another day at the office as Majors flashes Fennel, the copy of Celestial Charm, to say, take care of your Pulachronos, attack you for lethal. Chris says, you got it, man. Michael Majors wins this match 2-1. Naya Hexproof moving on. Trust me, we'll be tracking